Discord is flying without wings. Westlife are one of the most successful groups of all time, and they're millions of fans, including Joyce in New Brighton, who's just beside herself with excitement that they've just announced in August they will be coming out to 2 huge concerts at Wembley. So from no stage during lockdown to the biggest stage of all. And Shane Filan from Westlife joins us now. Shane, how's the homeschooling been going? Have the kids gone back to school?
Linda, how are you? Yeah, they're back at school this week. Well, my daughter actually is in secondary school, so she's not actually back till after Easter, actually. So yeah, it's just weird, you know, even kids going back to school. Even the thought of that, the day is going to be so different compared to what it's used to. You know, the last 4 months has been obviously complete lockdown, so it's definitely a change in scenery. All right.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of dads have said to me they've been made up to have the kids to themselves for the best part of a year. You know, it's a year you'll never get back, isn't it? That time with them, because childhood's so precious and goes so quickly, doesn't it? I think it's been brilliant to have them home.
100%, Linda. Yeah, I totally agree with that, because it's, you know, you get to bond with them in a way that you never would have before, and do things and be out in the garden or whatever it may be. Even if you're in lockdown, you're playing rugby together, you're going for a cycle, whatever, you know, stuff like that you just mightn't have, you take for granted, you know, in normal circumstances, but you kind of work out things to do as a family and stuff. And even cooking, and you know, our kids have been getting involved in cooking, and like watching you know, we'd have a movie on a Wednesday night, we'd have a movie on a Saturday night, and we, you know, different kids get to pick the movies and stuff like that. And it's just been, you know, there is positives out of it. Obviously there's a lot of negatives out of the last year. It's been horrendous, but as family goes, I think we've bonded amazingly over the last year. And again, like you said, a year that you would have never got, you know.
You haven't had to get your head around algebra all over again, have you?
Yes, I definitely do. And it was funny because I was actually decent at maths in school. So we have this thing with online schooling where Gillian, my wife, she's amazing. She organises the whole household, obviously, and she's just so good at it. And I'm like, right, okay, I'm going to take the boys now together or whatever. Right, okay, now we're going to do maths. Right, Shane, you can do the maths. And I'm like straight in. And I love doing the maths. I get excited about it, and because I used to love maths when I was younger. But then when it comes to Irish or French and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, here we go. No.
When you were sitting in geography, not your forte, no. When you were sitting in geography at Summerhill College or whatever with Keane and Mark, I mean, were you ever dreaming, age 12, of being one of the most successful bands of all time?
Do you know what? I think when we started school together, I think we always had dreams of it, but it was never going to happen, obviously. That's why we were literally in school studying every day, doing the exams, trying our best to get an education. But it was, we had the dreams, you know, even back then, you know, when we were kind of 15, 16, we were watching bands like obviously Take That and Boyzone in the UK. And then obviously, you're listening to Backstreet Boys. Backstreet Boys were probably our biggest influence. Because their music really appealed to us as kids, because they had a bit of an edge to them and stuff, and they were still pop, but they had a bit of an edge, and we wanted to be the Backstreet Boys, basically. And it's, you know, little did we know what was going to happen a few years later, you know, when it all kicked off.
But when you were kids yourself, you and your brothers and sisters, because there were 7 of you, what did your mum and dad have on in the background, on the radio or on the stereogram? What were they listening to?
My dad was a great singer. He loved to sing. So I definitely got it, I think, from him. My mum wasn't great at singing. She liked to whistle a lot. But when it came to singing, my dad used to play a lot of Jim Reeves, Michael Holiday, Joseph Locke. Like that. But he loved Jim Reeves. He was, you know, Bing Crosby was a huge influence as well, I think, growing up as a kid. He was like, you know, Dad was like, he's class. Frank Sinatra's good, but Bing Crosby is class. You know, not that he used to say, you know, his tone was so much better, he felt, or whatever. So I think that obviously, I suppose, sunk into me as a kid growing up, you know, to try and, I don't know, you know, try and become a better singer. And stuff like that. As life goes on, you look back at stuff now and think, them kind of things that he said to me was so important.
Yeah, they were all influences, weren't they? They were all, sinking in, weren't they? I mean, people like Joseph Locke obviously would not be an influence to you, but, that big ex-guardsman, what was he, 6'6" tall with a huge voice? Your dad seemed to like the fellas with the, the big voices, the big stage presence.
Absolutely, yeah, and like Bing Crosby was such an incredible, like Christmas time you'd always hear Bing Crosby, and White Christmas was the big song in our house every year. And but as I got a bit older, then obviously you start listening to so many other people, like even Lionel Richie and people like that. When I started seeing the first kind of videos on I remember watching Hello Lionel Richie. I'm watching that video going, oh my God, man, he's so famous. And then obviously as you get older, you get into Michael Jackson, all the other artists that were coming out at the time, Madonna and stuff. And it fascinated me. It fascinated me, music and pop music in particular.
And I mean, songwriting has turned out to be your forte, and then some. So were you being inspired? Were you already trying your hand at songwriting?
When I was younger, I didn't. Yeah, do you know what? It's funny because myself and Mark were talking about this the other day because, we've been doing a bit of songwriting for the new album and stuff. And we're as the years go on, we get more and more into it every year. And this album in particular, I don't know what's happened. Maybe it's lockdown and stuff. And we've been getting really, really into songwriting for this album, which is very exciting. But going back to it all, we were talking about, do you remember how this whole thing kind of started, and we started talking about a song that myself and Mark wrote back at the very, very beginning, like we're talking 23 years ago, called Together Girl Forever. And it was a song that we were writing, walking home from school and stuff. And we used to go into the park right beside the school and beside the cathedral and stuff. And we'd sit on the bench and we'd be like, right, we need to come up with a verse or come up with this chorus. And that was a song that we ended up getting made into a CD that we played for Louis Walsh. And that was a song that kind of got us, I suppose, our start in a way. But it's crazy to think that songwriting back then was actually just as important, I suppose, as it is now.
And you got the girl forever, didn't you? In Gillian. She's Keane's cousin.
Together Girl Forever. It was about Gillian. The song was about Gillian, my wife now, and the mother of my 3 children. So yeah, the song worked out pretty good.
So cool.
Definitely impressed her.
I was thinking, with St. Patrick's Day being this week, there's less than 5 million people in Ireland, aren't there? It's something like 4.9 million. And yet there's 60, 70, 80 million people around the world who've got ancestors from Ireland. It's amazing that such a small island has had the cultural impact it's had globally. Is it something in the storytelling tradition? How do you figure it?
I don't know. It's so true, though. You're right. There's so many people, especially, Liverpool, Manchester, all that area, in England. Then you obviously got America. There's like 40 million Irish American citizens and stuff, and with heritage and stuff. And it's just, even I was like watching the news today, and I was watching our Taoiseach, on telly, the head of our government, kind of talking about to Joe Biden about the heritage, and they were doing like a virtual Zoom for every year they do the shamrock, the gift of the shamrocks to the American president. So usually the Taoiseach goes to the White House, gives them a ceremony of giving him a load of shamrocks and stuff in a bowl, and it's a thing that's been on for like years, decades. But this time it was virtual, and I was watching it because I was just interested by it. And Joe Biden obviously is probably the most American president that Irish American president that we've ever seen after JFK. So it was just remarkable to listen to him talking about Ireland and his heritage and stuff like that. And then you realize, the American president has Irish heritage, and it's just incredible to look at that. And then, as you said, there's 70, 80 million people with Irish heritage around the world. So, yeah, we've definitely had an influence on the world as Irish people, definitely.
Fantastic. Have you been to JFK's homestead in Ireland, and have you been to New Ross, where his folks set sail from for their life in America, and shaken hands with that amazing statue of JFK at New Ross? Have you ever done that?
Well, I actually haven't done that, and I'm a huge JFK fan. Like my wife will tell you, like I'm proper obsessed. I've read so many books about him, and just his whole thing. I'm fascinated by his life, his death, everything. Everything that went on. But it's I went to the JFK Memorial when I was over in Boston last year, or the year before last, sorry, 2019. I keep saying last year, but then you forget nothing happened last year.
That's right.
2020, just nothing happened. Nobody went anywhere. Yeah, so 2019, just after the Westlife tour, we went to Boston because Gillian's family, her brother lives in Boston. So we went over there anyway. We went to the memorial, the library, the JFK library, and it was just, it was fascinating to see all the stuff about him. And I'd read probably 2 or 3 books, one about his Irish visit. When he came to Ireland just before, like 6 months before he was assassinated, he'd a really famous visit to Ireland where he came for 4 days, and he kind of wasn't meant to come to Ireland, but he wanted to go to Ireland, so he just put it in his schedule. And it's a really, really good book. But yeah, just like amazing. I'm really, really fascinated by him, actually.
Do you find the more that you go through life yourself and the more experience, like you're a dad of 3 youngsters and they're going to be making their way in the world, do you find you become more interested in heritage and history and genetics and, the talents that are handed down through families?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point, actually. In the last few years, I've noticed that an awful lot more about myself, where I'm definitely reading a lot more. I wasn't really into reading books before, probably a few years ago, and I started reading, and then I realized I needed glasses when I started reading, because I started reading books, and then I used to get dizzy when I stood up, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? And one of my mates said to me, oh, buddy, you need glasses. And I was like, what? I said, I don't need glasses. And he goes, no, trust me, you need glasses, so go get your eyes tested. So one of my eyes is slightly weaker than the other, which hence made me dizzy when I stood up after reading. But anyways, long story short, I got into reading and reading books about JFK and different things about Irish heritage, and just even like stuff about the streets of Sligo. There's a book called The Streets of Sligo in my hometown, and just hearing about all the different things that went on in Ireland and all the history of Ireland. And when you're back in school, you don't take as much, I suppose, you don't take as much notice of it, but then when you're getting a bit older and you see all these documentaries and different things happening on Irish television or on Netflix or all these things now, you nearly get more interested in the books and start reading stuff. And so I'm into a lot of that with when it comes to history, about Ireland especially. But I think everywhere, Irish-English connection, Irish-American connection. It's very interesting. And I've got more and more into it. And the kids now are starting to ask questions about stuff like that. And I can tell them the answers in detail, which I wouldn't have known before.
No, indeed not. And all the cultural connections which your kids will eventually see as well around the world, and the films, films like The Quiet Man and Ryan's Daughter will be, probably won't cross their path. But the most recent films that have featured Irish heritage certainly will, and all the Irish movie stars that have come out, whether it's Patrick Bergin or whether it's Richard Harris or Maureen O'Hara or whoever, for a small island again to produce these almighty talents for the world stage I find really fascinating.
It really is, even when you think of bands, you think of U2 and obviously Westlife and the Core and the Cranberries and Dermot Kennedy, loads of different people that are, Niall Horan, obviously One Direction, all these different bands that have come out of Ireland. And it's amazing to kind of see it, and then actresses even like Saoirse Ronan. My daughter's big into drama. She loves acting. She loves all that kind of stuff. And, she's a big fan of Saoirse Ronan and stuff. And you see how well she's doing. And so many other actors and actresses now really breaking into the scene. Like it's more bigger now ever than from Ireland, which is amazing to see. But, it just shows you, there's opportunity out there. You got to go get it. And you gotta dream big, I suppose, like we did 20 years ago. But nothing's impossible. You just got to make it happen if you can.
Have you still friendships that you keep either from school or from growing up in Sligo, and from when you used to help out in your mum and dad's diner business during the school holidays?
Yeah, definitely. I've a lot of my friends, I have a few close friends that I've been friendly with since I was a teenager. And it's one of those things that people say you'll always have 1 or 2 good friends, and that's usually it. They'll be your best friends forever. My dad used to always say that to me. You're lucky to have 1 or 2 really great friends, and I still have them, which is amazing. But yeah, obviously, looking back on the time in Carlton Cafe growing up, I grew up in a cafe, lived over the cafe, in one of the main streets in Sligo, and it was an incredible upbringing. I had 7 brothers and sisters, my mum and dad. worked hard and stuff, and we had a business, and there was always amazing food to have, or fresh chips, or whatever it may be, and different things that we used to have every day, and I felt very lucky. So, and now the same building is still in my family, and my brother has a big supermarket, kind of, like a city, like a town supermarket in there now. Very successful business, and it's great to see it, 45 years later. Wow. It's still in the family, and it's still a successful building, which is lovely to see, and it's a very proud thing for us.
Fantastic. You were saying that your mum wasn't particularly musical, May, but she didn't give up until she'd spoken to Louis Walsh about you, did she?
Absolutely, yeah. She, for what it was in music, she definitely never gave up. Is right. She, she was the one that made the call, and she was the one that made it all happen. And unfortunately my mum passed away about a year and a half ago now, December 2019. And it was funny, around the time of her funeral, the boys used to say to me, without your mum, I got amazing messages from the boys at the time, and obviously we were all at her funeral. It was before COVID, so we were all there, and it was just a beautiful moment for us to be able to sing for her and stuff. But they were like, we were chatting about even the day before, and when the boys came to see me, and they were saying, like, your mum, without your mum, we wouldn't be here, man. Your mum was the reason this all happened. Without that phone call, we'd be nothing. And it really kind of meant so much more to me then than ever before. They might have said something similar before, but they really, really said it, and they sent me some beautiful messages, all three of them, and it was amazing to see, I suppose what she really meant to them, and it was she got an amazing send off at her funeral. It was lovely, and it was amazing.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic to have that relationship, and what you meant to her as well, and the way she worshipped you so much that she would go to that that degree to keep telephoning Louis Walsh, and you lost the big man, your dad, a few months ago, and I know that's been terribly hard, and the ultimate heartbreak. Has it helped being from a big family though, having your siblings, having your own children?
Absolutely. 2020, kind of the horrible year of 2020 for everybody. But for me, definitely, it was definitely the worst year of my life. But it started in December 2019, if you know what I mean. And 9 months later, then my dad passed away from cancer as well. So, but I was so lucky in one way to have 6 brothers and sisters that were older than me, and we helped each other get through it. It's very difficult to lose a parent is obviously something that everyone dreads their whole life. When's it going to happen, or what's going to happen to them? And then the two of them go together. It was very hard. But in saying that too, my mum and dad were married, 55 years. They were, the most incredible love story, the two of them. Honestly, it was unbelievable to watch them as I grew up and stuff. And my dad just couldn't be without her. He was obviously very sick with cancer, but in a way, I'm happy they're both together. I'm happy they were both together, because my dad he wouldn't have he would have found it so hard to be without her, and it was a very difficult time for him. And it was just one of those things that you're nearly glad they're together again. And but it was horrible. Yeah, it was a very tough time. But yeah, family is very important when stuff like that happens. Everybody come together. Yeah.
And does that kind of life experience make it harder to sing and to songwrite, or does it actually help you to have somewhere to put the emotion?
Absolutely, I think it really, really helps songwriting, and I found that in the last few months. Even like sometimes when I'm kind of writing out chords or lyrics or different things, I've always got a picture with them, near me. Like I've a big frame up and stuff with a picture of them and stuff, and they always kind of they always inspire me. Even when they were alive, they were amazing parents, and now even they're not with me anymore, but they're still with me. They're still with me all the time, and it's lovely to have that. It's a comfort kind of thing. And hopefully they're watching down, looking after me and keeping an eye on me. But there's definitely something brewing when it comes to the songwriting, for sure, in the last few months.
You betcha. And your alternative family, of course, Westlife, you reunited 2 years ago after being apart for several years. Have you been able to see each other in the last lockdown year, if only on Zoom? Have you been able to catch up with each other's families on the news?
To be honest, no, we haven't really seen each other because obviously it is complete another. We're in and out of lockdowns. Like I haven't. I've seen Keane because Keane's in Sligo, so we saw during some of the kind of breaks in lockdown where it was slightly eased or whatever, we could meet up as two families and stuff like that. And we met up a few times, but like I haven't seen Mark in over a year. I haven't seen Nikki in over a year. Which is really strange, but I've seen more of them because we're on Zoom all the time. We're doing these, meetings and different things that we're recording an album virtually at the moment, which is so weird. But in some way, it's actually really nice because we're getting to see each other a bit more now because of this, and we're definitely more in touch as a band in general. Whether it be on WhatsApp or text or whatever, we're closer than we've probably ever been because we're made to be apart, which sounds a bit strange, but it's the way it's worked out, which is lovely for this album and I suppose the future of the band.
So after a year of lockdown and no stage, you're coming out storming. You've got this great news about signing with a new contract with Warner, and you're coming out with 2 concerts on the biggest stage of all, Wembley. So from no stage to Wembley. Amazing. How do you get match fit for that?
This is it. The rehearsals, the rehearsals are, going to be, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be very exciting, Linda. It's obviously Wembley Stadium is, was something that we wondered would it happen this year. Obviously, it was meant to happen last year, and then it got put off to this year, and because of the pandemic. But now with the government restrictions and stuff, it's at the moment it's officially happening. So it's going to be on the 21st of August, and then now we've added a second date, which is for us is like wow. It's like the pinnacle of our career, this gig, and to get to play it, a second night now. Because the first was sold out. It's amazing, and it's definitely going to be the most probably important weekend of our career. But also, it feels like I was saying this today as well to the boys. Actually, we were chatting, and it feels like a kind of a start to our career again. It was like there was a massive pause button hit, and now we're coming back, and we're getting to play Wembley Stadium, the most famous stadium in the world. It's like it's not just a gig. This thing is a weekend in the music industry. After all that everyone's been through last year, this is going to be starting off a whole new thing of music again, and we're, I suppose, going to be a big part of that. But it means an awful lot, not just to us on stage. It means a lot to the people that are going to be at the concert, looking around, seeing people beside them, and being able to hug people or being able to sing songs together. Or it may be, it's going to be one hell of a weekend and one hell of a comeback, I'm sure.
It's going to be as a rebirth. It's amazing, isn't it? It's almost like a poetic thing about it, because we've all reconnected. We've found there was a disconnect going on, wasn't there, in society? Now we've reconnected with community, with neighbours, with friends, with family. We've found a new respect for perhaps jobs that were maybe disregarded before. Like we've a new respect for how hard it is being a cleaner and how important it is being a cleaner, a professional cleaner. In this year of when hygiene has been everything, we now perhaps realise that it turns out that the people who run the country are the people in all these kind of jobs.
Absolutely, 100%, and healthcare workers and people that drive the ambulances and all these different things that go on that you think is just part of everyday life, but without them we can't survive, and you realise that when you're a singer, when you're whatever you may do for a living, it's everybody's job is so important in the world at the moment. I think it's a massive rebirth, as you said, but a rebirth not just on music, a rebirth on how we look at the world. I think countries are going to be a lot more friendlier to each other. I think people are going to look after each other a bit more, going, listen, this thing's, if something like this happens again, it can just rip the world apart. We need to look after each other here, and in every walk of life. And I think it's going to be I hope it's going to be just a better world going forward.
It's not a bad ambition for your three, Nicole and Patrick and Shane, is it, to give them a better world the other side of this?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think family is going to mean an awful lot more, just like you said there a second ago, family and respect for family and respect for people's, I suppose, privacy, for respect for space, and being able to go, you know what, we don't need to meet up with somebody this weekend, or we don't need to go there on holidays, we don't need to do stuff like that. That's it's superficial, we don't need we can be at home, we can watch a movie together, we can play cards together. You know, like the thing of playing cards that nobody ever does. Like, you know, that's become such a popular thing. Or playing board games again. Stuff like that is so important and so much fun. And I think it gives kids more memories. You know, so yeah, it's going to be a very, I don't know, interesting world, and hopefully a more, I don't know, happier world going forward.
Who gets to choose the movie in the family this weekend then? Whose turn is it?
This weekend, I think it's Patrick. I think this weekend. So yeah, it was. We kind of watch one. We probably watch 2 or 3 a week, and it's just amazing, you know, because it kind of everyone gets excited about what movie you're going to pick. Oh, I don't like that movie. I don't like that movie. So the person gets to choose. That's it. It's basically whatever that person wants, we watch it. And if we've seen it before, we have to watch it again. But usually we try and pick a new one. But it's so good, so much fun.
Yeah, negotiating with your kids is, you know, it makes working in a band a doddle after that, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. It's brilliant to catch up with you, Shane. All the very best for what looks like an enormous and exciting year ahead for you. All the best to you and your lovely family. Great talking to you. Bye for now, Shane.
Thanks, Linda. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.